Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard Gaming. Today I've got a new episode of my series called How About That, where I show you a game that's either really good or notable for some reason along with my commentary on it. This one falls more into the notable category than good, and I'll be showing you the complete game of Cannon Dancer, or Osman, or Cannon Dancer Osman, depending on the version you're playing. Now don't go yet if you haven't heard of this one. It is interesting for a few reasons. First, take a look at Strider here. It's a Capcom classic and one of my favorite arcade games of all time. I love it and I still play it frequently, even more than 30 years after its release. Strider notably had an awful sequel from US Gold on multiple 8 and 16-bit platforms called Strider Returns or Strider 2 with Roman numerals. But it got an official sequel from Capcom years later called Strider 2 with the normal digit 2 in the arcades and on PlayStation. You may think that those were the only sequels to Strider in the 90s, but if you think that, well, you're wrong! Kind of. There's sort of another Strider sequel that people in a certain segment of retro gaming know, and that game is this one. This is Cannon Dancer, or Osman, or Cannon Dancer Osman. Cannon Dancer was released by Mitchell in 1996, but it was created by a bunch of ex-Capcom employees, most notably Koichi Yotsui, who was the director of Strider. So Cannon Dancer here is basically an unofficial sequel to Strider, and you can see Strider's DNA all over the place in Cannon Dancer. I could have probably worded that better. Moving right along, Cannon Dancer is a decent game and it has a lot of cool stuff in it, but it's not as good as Strider and not nearly as innovative. It's better than other Strider-alikes like Run Saber, but it has its issues. The colors are pretty garish, the game is often hard to look at, the music is just not good, and the gameplay could have used some serious refinement and balancing. The last thing before we delve into this one, although it was released into the arcades in 1996, Osman here didn't find its way onto home systems until April of 2023. With that release, they actually named it Cannon Dancer Osman. Now that version has a few quality of life improvements over the original, adding things like a double jump and some other play mechanics, but it's pretty close to it otherwise. Still, I want to have an authentic experience for this video, so I'll be playing through the pretty short and difficult arcade original. Alright, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's get on with it. Alright, here we go. This is the US version of Osman, which was originally known as Cannon Dancer in Japan, and they changed the name to Osman for the US, and that recent re-release I mentioned is called Cannon Dancer Osman. So many names for one single little game. So this US version of the arcade release here has this brief little sort of mini tutorial showing you what you can do, and it's actually missing one thing, in that you can actually run if you hold down the attack button. You can go faster. So yeah, that's right, this game actually has a bomb attack with the third button. So I left all the cutscenes in for this, but if you can figure out the story and decipher this thing, feel free to tell me about it in the comments. I mean, I've read about it, and I know what it's supposed to be, but just going by what's in-game here, it's kind of impossible to decipher, I think. So here's the main game, and as you can see, yes, it is very Strider-like on first glance, except we've got sort of a more garish palette, and our main character here just attacks with punches and kicks. He doesn't use a weapon, but you do get, like, Ninja Gaiden Shadow-like sort of option Shadow Ninja things. So they will do extra attacks, and you can sort of position them temporarily in other places. And as you keep getting more power-ups, you keep getting more shadows until you get your max. Then you temporarily get this attack where you have longer reach, where it gives you sort of a slash, not entirely dissimilar from the one that we would see in Strider with his sword. And here again, just a lot of stuff sort of reminiscent of Strider, no question about it. And while this looks pretty easy when you see me going through this, I'm going to warn you that this game is insanely hard, and I had a really good run on this first level here. I didn't use save states or anything for this. I just practiced a lot until I got really good at it. And here's our first really weirdo boss. And while we're fighting this little mini-boss thing, I'll also note that the music in this game is pretty bad. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's just kind of annoying. You know, at best, it's just there. At worst, it's actively aggravating to listen to. So that's one thing it definitely did not have on Strider, that's for sure. And keep in mind, this game came out years after Strider. This came out at the dawn, basically, of the 3D era, and basically the 3D games were starting to get really popular, while 2D fighting games were still around, you know, holding the 2D fort at that time. Pretty much everything else, you know, in the mid-90s like that, I mean, it was pretty much failing unless it was a 2D fighter or 3D game, you know, with polygons. So here's our first full boss. Again, this is going to look pretty easy, but it's way harder than I'm making it look here. You'll see if you try it yourself. One thing I'll note also is if you get hit, you lose a shadow for each hit that you take. And if you're losing, you know, shadow ninjas here, you're losing significant attack power. Well, it doesn't matter too much for this first boss. It matters a lot when you fight this boss again at the end of the game. Spoiler alert. So there we go, there's stage 1. Pretty nice. Pretty good run-through on that one, if I do say so myself. Here's another one of these cutscenes, and yeah, they're just weird. So in stage 2 here, you'll see we've got sort of, I guess, Sonic-like pinball bumper things. They're like the things that throw Sonic around in Sonic games, but they're crystals in this one, and they make you bounce really high. And depending on the angle of the crystal, you know, that's the angle of the bounce. Now that little mini-boss, I don't usually take him down that fast. That was a really good takedown. If you hurt him and damage him, he'll start, and you're too slow about it, he'll start crawling along the ground, and then he'll jump up and you have to slide under him, you know, to avoid damage. Here we take out a couple of tigers, because screw endangered species, that's why. Now, for these little cutscenes that constantly interrupt the gameplay, well, not constantly, but fairly often, too often I would say, you can skip them if you press the start button. I just left them in here so you could see, you know, what the full experience is like when I'm playing it. So you see we get something quite reminiscent of running down the mountainside in Stage 2 in Strider. And we'll have a couple of those throughout the game here. There'll be another one towards the end. And you do have momentum in this game, which is something you didn't really see in Strider. So the longer you run uninterrupted, the faster you'll get, until you hit a max speed. So, I mean, there's a lot of good, solid ideas here. But this game, it's just way too, I don't know. It's just unpolished. It's too raw. It's like they needed more time to fully refine the gameplay and balance out the difficulty. Because as it is, these first few levels, if you practice, you can get good. I mean, as you can see, I barely have taken a hit, I think, in either of these two levels. I think I got hit once in this level and then got a life thing to refill it. But it does get a lot harder, and towards the end, you know, it's next to impossible to do it without getting hit. Of course, I know now that I've said that, people will point me to all these perfect runs of Osman, but, no, that's alright. I'm just talking about for mere mortals who just want to play the game and enjoy it. So again, more of this weird old plot where it, you know, it seems like they are telling you to go do something, but instead they capture you and then you end up chained to a rock in the desert. So like the dialogue didn't gel with the action on screen. And you'll see that basically in every cutscene in this game. A lot of people have said the cutscenes are really hard to follow, and they absolutely are. We'll notice in the Japanese version here, where it's just plain old Cannon Dancer, the game itself is basically the same, but there's a few options where you can fight the bosses in a different order. There's some actual, like, weird dialogue choices and stuff, and they remove those from the US version. Here's our desert level, which at the beginning, I like it better than the desert level in Arcade Card Strider for the PC Engine CD arcade card. Roast him in the sands. So yeah, just really weird, right? As you go on. And now, finally, we have sort of a softer color palette, something that is not hard on the eyes. And we get these things that just twirl around, kind of like one of the last stages in Gradius 3. There, I think that might actually be my first death in the entire run-through here. There'll be more, don't worry. I am not a professional Osman player, that is for sure. Not bad at it. And then we have another little section where we're going to just run and then start tumbling upward, as one does, I assume. Picked up one of the rare life-ups. And here is our next boss encounter. I do kind of like the weird and wacky character designs of the enemies in this game. There's no real consistent style throughout, but it's definitely interesting to look at least. And look at that. We've got sort of our anti-gravity thing here. Doesn't work exactly the same as Strider, but it's similar. I mean, there's a couple of places where you can just kind of circle around, sort of like those satellite bosses in that game. And you've finally seen me really making use of the sort of the screen crush or bomb, sort of attack. The only way you can replenish those, as far as I know, is to die. If there are replenishments for those, I've never seen them. So we take out that boss, and then we go on to the next stage. A little cutscene with all these very happy people on a boat. And we'll note here, for this stage, at the halfway point, I did 2 runs of this game for this recording, and I switched to the second one because I make it through that faster. I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. I'm telling you about it right up front here. I'll tell you when the switch happens. It'll be at the point where I get on sort of a surfboard, so you'll know it by that. And again, in Strider, our Stage 3 is the flying battleship. In this one, Stage 4 is sort of the regular old battleship as you start it. But it's going to change a little bit. There I thought maybe I had enough momentum to reach that thing and skip the middle part, but I didn't. Big shock. Now we get onto this surfboard type thing, and that's where the switch happened. So for the next, I think, level and a half, or maybe 2 levels, this is my second run, and then I switched back to the first after that. And the reason I switched is I wanted to show you this part, because this part, it seems like it's almost impossible to do without getting hit. But if you just hang out like almost all the way at the front of the screen, and you've got your shadows going on here, you can do this without getting hits. In my other run, I took a few hits, so I wanted to show you, what you could do versus what I actually did do. Then we hop on this sword, and we're going to go up onto the left, up onto this sword, and we're going to go flying up into the air, where the background suddenly has a really weird choppy frame rate, but just for a moment. I don't know why. Here we are, headed to our boss of Stage 3. You just gotta have a nice, long, interruptive cutscene. And this boss is a real pain in the butt. She grabs you and just throws you up into the air. If you've got bomb attacks, you want to use them here and take her out easily. Like I said, the only downside to using those bomb attacks is they don't replenish unless you die. But in these upcoming stages, you're gonna die, so you might as well use the bomb attacks and do things the easy way. That's the way I look at it. So this is still run number 2. I'll tell you when I switch back to the first one. Again, really hard to do these sections without getting hit, because these enemies just come flying in from off-screen firing. I mean, you can do it. I've done it a few times before, just not during the recording sessions I had for this video. There's some more Strider-like gravity as we circle around and orbit this section. Technically, we're orbiting the stones there. There we go, taking out yet another little mini-boss. And now, we've got another one coming up. Well, regular boss, I guess. Wilf. What a name! Wilf. Reminds me of another word that's not safe for family-friendly videos like this one. Anyway, here we go, into the palace so we can relive where we were right before we got captured and thrown into the desert oh so long ago. I mean, that was what, 3 minutes ago? Yeesh. Time sure does fly. Anyway, at this point, I would say Osman is still pretty decent, but things are going to take really a turn for the worse after this level. We take another death there. What was that, number 3? And there you go, we've defeated Wilf. And it wasn't in his scenario, and then he disintegrates. But don't worry, we'll see him later. because like so many other games, this has a boss rush as the very last level. Can't complain too much, Strider did that too, but I think it just felt a little better in that game than it does in this one. And this section here, wow, this isn't going to look too hard when I do it now, but that's because, I've done it a few times, and I kind of know, a better way to approach it, which is just get in there, use your special attacks, take things out. If you try to just do this without using your specials, and snake your way around like the level is constructed instead of just kind of going straight up, you are going to get hit a lot, and you are going to die several times. So this section is really hard. It's much harder than it looked right there. And this boss, it's barely even worth fighting him, unless you've got a bunch of shadows with you. It's better to just take the death, and then use your special attack on him a few times to take him out. Yeah, it's a little cheesy, and if I was actually spending my own quarters in an arcade, maybe I'd try to do it right. But it's one of those things where it's really just not worth it. So here's the guy who had me chained to the rock, and he says, "Hey, you've returned from the desert." And then he cowardly backs up, till he gets stabbed with a sword and just disintegrates. Now, one thing I'll also tell you about here is if you keep running forward and you get your momentum built up, they'll just walk right off the edge and die there, right at the end of the level. It's really dumb. They should have put in a hard stop so your character wouldn't do that. Alright, and here we are. This is the game's final level, guys. And it's a doozy. Unlike all the other stages where you rematerialize right where you died, that doesn't happen here. You have checkpoints in this stage, and they are brutal. Much better to take a death here, because you want to have full health going into this, and 3 special attacks, at least that's what I find is the easiest thing to do here. You really have to kind of memorize the enemy layout and where they, come from. And we'll bounce on our Sonic-like things. We'll have to dodge this big truck that's coming down. Use another special there. And we'll pop up here. We gotta goad the next boss into coming out. Again, this is the boss from, what was it, stage 2? I don't know. 2 or 3, I don't remember. It's Hirio. Hirio. I don't know. However you pronounce it. So with this one, I find it's easiest to use, some shadow attacks to take him down to about half this health, and then use the special to take him out the rest of the way. Now this thing can be pretty easy if you're here with like 3 or 4 shadows, and next to impossible if you only have just, your regular attacks. How come? Look at the time limit up there, my retro gaming friends. That time limit, if you only have your basic attack and no shadows, it is almost impossible to kill this thing in the time limit. I ran out of time a few times on this when I was first getting used to this game and trying it out. And those were painful memories, but they taught me how to do it right. And now we have to fight a doppelganger. A fake. His name is Fake. I'm gonna take a death here because it's not worth it. I can't think of any time that I've ever beat him just using my regular attacks or shadows. I've got it here sometimes with 2 or 3 shadows, but didn't have them this time. It's easier to just die, use a continue there, come back, and then use your specials to take him out. Sorry if you feel that's cheesing the game, but like I said, my only goal here is to show you the whole thing as efficiently as possible. So that's why I'm playing it the way that I am here. And there we go. Fake is killed. Now we have another escape thing. Can't tell, but there's a column of fire coming from the right, getting closer and closer to the left. There it is. So we have another big run, and then we get onto our bouncy crystals. And look at this, we've got to fight 3 of the sort of regular-sized bosses simultaneously here. And you can take them down without using any specials. Another spoiler alert, I don't manage to do that here. But I give it the old college try, as they say. Now, I told you I never beat that other boss without using the specials. I think if you got here and you had, 3 or 4 shadows with you, even though we're fighting these bosses all at once, it wouldn't be too bad to take them out You know, especially based on how much damage I did with multiple shadows to them earlier. So I would like to try that sometime, but I don't know if I'm ever going to be good enough at this game to arrive at this point with shadows on me. And I don't know if I want to play it enough to get that good, because I just don't enjoy it enough for that. Oh well, what can you do? I don't remember the names of all these bosses, but you can see them up on the screen. The one that's left is the one that's the biggest pain in the butt. Old Cannons is the one that's left here. I used my one remaining special, but he managed to survive it, so we gotta kill him the old-fashioned way now. If you're really lucky and fortunate here, and you time things just right, you can take out all 3 of these mini-bosses with just a couple of specials, like, instantly. And you'll have one left going into the final boss. Because after this, yep, there's just one final boss left. And again, when you get to this point in the game, this stuff, I mean, it's just not a lot of fun to go through these. I don't find the level design compelling. I don't find the overly garish palettes that it uses, you know, through colors throughout the game to be appealing in any way. Osman is a game that's often hard to look at, and it can be tough to discern what's going on and what's background and what's foreground. You know, it's just, the art direction in the game itself really needed some improvement. So here's our final boss. There's the world. You know what the world is, right? So now we're gonna fight her. This one you can actually take out without having to resort to specials, without too much trouble. I didn't manage to do it here, but you'll see me, you know, dodge a lot of things and keep this fight going for quite a while before she finally gets me. I had a couple of unfortunate hits that I could have avoided if I had paid a little better attention, but oh well. So there you can see I got her down to about 2/3 of the energy. Or him, or I don't know. They imply sort of that this is a guy, so I guess it's a guy. I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments there. But yeah, here, we'll just use our specials. And that's it. We've taken him out. And now we have defeated Osman. Or Cannon Dancer. Or Cannon Dancer Osman, depending on which version you're playing. So there we go. Let's see our end text. I don't even know who exactly is supposed to be saying this. I guess it's the boss we just killed. Hopefully it's not our main character. But yep, there we go. So the ending here isn't too long. It's really just credits from this point. They kept things very simple, much like they did for Strider. And I will say the person whose credits went down there for the music, this was the last game they ever did professionally. And I really don't like the music in it. I can appreciate what they were going for. They wanted it to be a little more exotic, you know, and just to better fit sort of the Arabian theme, I guess, for where you start out and where things are based at the beginning and where you travel to throughout. I don't feel like the music is good. Like, the melodies aren't good, they're not strong, it doesn't stand out very much, and it just, the quality is kind of bad. Like, of the instruments and the samples, if they sound like samples, I hope they're samples, I hope that's not regular FM generated sound that sounds like that. But anyway, that's Osman. Okay, there you have it, a complete playthrough of Mitchell's Cannon Dancer / Osman / Cannon Dancer Osman. I don't have much to add to the commentary, really. In summary, this game is just kind of okay. Those colors are pretty garish and hard to look at, the music ranges from annoying to just there, and no track stood out as memorable. The gameplay ranges from interesting and engaging to outright infuriating. Cannon Dancer could have definitely used more time in the oven for some serious refinement. There's just so many cheap hits and insane difficulty spikes. This is a game that was clearly meant to relieve players of as many quarters as possible. So is it worth playing today? Well, if you love Strider, maybe. I can almost guarantee you won't like this one nearly as much, but it is not devoid of charm. This isn't a review video, but if I were reviewing it, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. I'd say it's a smidge above average, but is held back by its several faults. So what do you all think? Have you played Cannon Dancer before? Is this your first time seeing the game? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Tell me all about it in the comments. That'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed the video, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. If you want to be a swell person and support the work that I do here, you can do that via Patreon, Ko-fi, or YouTube memberships. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.